The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Gwilda Wiyaka's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the Science of Magic or endorsed in any manner by Gwilda Wiyaka, Relmar McConnell Media Company, its affiliated networks, stations, or employees. Welcome to the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, a program dedicated to uncovering the unified nature of reality and humanity's ever-evolving place as truly galactic beings. For more information on the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit us online at www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Welcome to the Science of Magic, a place where science and magic come together to transform fact into evolving truth. We're coming to you through the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net, and can also be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. This hour we'll be exploring Stop, Look, and Listen. Many of us have become blinded to the fact that we are all aspects of the divine. There's a continuum from high frequency of total unity to the polarized reality in which we live. It's easy to get so caught up in the illusion of duality, we completely forget our origins from and connection to spirit. My original teacher was a shaman, medicine man, and Lakota elder. He was also a devout Christian. Time and time again, I would ask how he reconciled the one God teachings of the Christian faith with the power animals, elementals, spirits of the directions, and helping spirits he constantly communed with in his shamanic practice. In his many attempts to explain, one answer has always stayed with me. As was his way, it was in the form of a story. The snow falls from the sky onto the mountain. Come spring, the spirit of the sun's fire melts the snow, forming runoff that passes over the earth. The runoff creates streams. Streams join to form rivers that eventually become the ocean. The spirit of the wind passes across the face of the ocean, taking the water up into the clouds, which travel to drop snow back on the mountains. No matter the form, snow, runoff, river, ocean, or cloud, it is one and the same spirit. How you experience its form depends on where you are and how you look and listen. There are many spirits within Wakantankan. In its mercy, the spirit that moves through all things has separated itself into smaller portions that we may perceive them. Every form has a lesson for you, Wiyaka. They are your guides, but you must slow down and listen in order to hear their message. I've come to understand power animals and helping spirits in this framework. They can come to me as physical beings, like the raven yakking in the tree over my house. They may be presented as spirit, like the raven in a shamanic journey or in my dreams. But they are all divinations of the spirit that moves through all things. They all present a message about divinity and balance if I just stop, look, and listen to my dreams and all that transpires in the world around me. Our guides never impose. We must choose to commune. We must be ready to see beyond our day-to-day worlds into the magical world of unity, where all things are of one spirit. From the vast workings of the universe to the balance found in each atom, everything works in perfect synchronicity. Most humans have stepped out of the natural order, falling into unconsciousness and delusion. We live in the pain of separation and agony of isolation, but there's no need. Our spirit helpers are as near as our next breath, just waiting for the day we stop, look, and listen and ask for help. What are these helpers? They are God and they are of us. There is no separation. They're ever-evolving frequencies just waiting to help step up our frequency to unity and reunion with all that is. Since the early days when my old teacher taught me how to stop, look, and listen, I've communed with my spirit helpers. I've been comforted by their presence when nothing else would console me. I've been directed by their guidance when lost in darkness. They're with me in sleeping and waking. Though the human world I'm much alone, but never lonely, for my guides and I am connected with all that is. They are ever a part of me and serve as my thread to the divine. The most wonderful thing of all is power animals and helping spirits are standard issue. We all have them. Regardless if we perceive them as angels, fairies, or thunder beings, all are of one spirit, just waiting for us to reach out and with their help, rejoin the circle of life. Our guest this hour, Deborah Engel, is the author of Let Your Spirit Guide Speak, a simple guide for the life purpose and abundance and joy, and the only little prayer you need. She's a workshop facilitator, a longtime teacher of A Course of Miracles, widely traveled speaker, and workshop leader. She lives in Madison County, Iowa. After this commercial break, I'll introduce Deborah and we'll explore the powerful yet mysterious world of spirit guides, so don't go away. You're listening to The Science of Magic. Prior innovative episodes can always be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour, Deborah Engel, is the author of Let Your Spirit Guide Speak, a simple guide for a life of purpose, abundance, and joy. Deborah, thank you so much for joining us on The Science of Magic.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
How did you become aware of your spirit guides?
Well, I think early on in life, I was aware that there was some kind of presence with me. I tell a story in the book about a time when I was pretty young, in 5th grade, and going to a slumber party and wanted something to take along to that slumber party with me, and just desperately was asking and asking for it. And right before, the very last minute before I was about to leave for that slumber party, a package came in the mail, and there it was. It seems like such a simple example, but there was a knowing even then that I was talking with someone. It was more than just prayer to God. It was a feeling of some helpers who were there with me to just line up things in my life to make them easy and to meet my desires. And that's something that I've learned more about as I've gotten older and really gone through a spiritual journey.
What the process of learning to communicate with them look like for you personally?
I'd say much of it has happened over the past, 10, 20, even 30 years, where I've been much more mindful about having conversations with them. For me, what I discovered is that if I sit down, close my eyes, take some deep breaths, and pose a question, there will be information that will just float in. It's kind of like a leaf floating on the breeze, and there's just a knowing there. When I adapted that and refined it a little bit by actually sitting down with paper and pen or in front of the computer on the keyboard and actually typed what I heard, I found that the messages were even more complete and more directive. So I think for me, one of the things I've learned is that the more attention we give, the more focus that we give to these relationships and these conversations, the clearer the communication will be. It's very much like having a relationship with a human being. If we just get together every once in a while maybe talk on the phone for a few minutes, we'll have a little bit of a relationship. But if we sit down every day and really bring all of ourselves to that communication, wow, we can just have a very different relationship and so much information that can help us.
So it sounds to me like you started engaging in automatic writing to communicate with them. Is that correct?
I would say so. I think for me it's more, it is a question and answer kind of process where I feel as though I'm just, again, listening and then I'm writing what I'm hearing. I think for some people, they completely get themselves out of the way and then their fingers, are typing on their own or that pen is going across the paper on its own. For me, there's still a sense of being me, being part of the process, but it's more as though I'm taking dictation, really just as if I were sitting down and having a conversation and writing down what someone else is saying. So I think it's just a subtle difference, but the most important thing is that that process of communication will be perfect for every individual, and it will be different for every individual. There's no one right way to do this.
I'm glad you brought that up because we each have different ways of learning, whether we're visual or audio or kinesthetic, but we also have different ways of perceiving that tend to run along the same lines. So it sounds to me like you're pretty much audio. You hear it in your mind's ear. Is that correct?
That's right.
Got it. And it's so important that everybody recognizes that it's not going to be bells and whistles. It's going to come in through the channels that you're used to receiving things in.
Exactly. I talk in the book about something called spirit envy, which I have experienced for myself. Years ago, I came to know people who have really extraordinary abilities in being able to communicate with their guides, people who see their guides, people who are very, very sensitive to energy, far beyond what I am. And I would be envious or jealous of their abilities and downplay my own, or think that maybe I shouldn't really trust what I was experiencing because it wasn't the same as what they were experiencing. But one day, sitting down, talking with my guides, they explained to me that it's so important for me to have this communication with them in this particular way by listening, because so much of what I do in my life is about listening to people and then being able to give feedback and being a channel for information from the other side. If I were able to see my guides, I wouldn't be able to develop that auditory ability as much. So it turned out that it was just perfect for me. And that helped me really let go of that spirit envy of being jealous of other people's processes and to really appreciate my own.
Of course, I teach the shamanic arts and I have large classes at different times. And we go into shamanic journey to talk to our spirit helpers. And spirit envy it's so funny you brought this up because what I've seen is by the time we get around to speaking what our journey was, it sounds so much better to everybody out there than we experienced it at the time. So don't you think bringing it into ordinarity also gives it more power?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's one of the most important things about all of this is for us to know, as you described in that wonderful story at the beginning, that it's the most natural thing in the world, the most normal thing in the world, and actually the easiest thing when we open up to it and allow it to come through in the way that's right for us. But if we're busy looking at everybody else and thinking that the grass is greener on the other side with the way that they're doing it, then we're literally putting fear blocks in the way of our communication, and we're creating a lot of static that just doesn't need to be there. So much of this is like tuning the radio dial and just tuning into that perfect frequency. So when we can really focus on what that frequency is for us, not for someone else, then we can get to it much faster.
Yeah, it's like stepping out of our power if we try to do it the way somebody else does, right?
Exactly, exactly.
So did you find it? Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think one of the things that I've discovered in all of this is how much our ego fear can get in the way. And that's why I really encourage people to spend time asking for their fears to be healed so that they open up that pathway and that door for clear communication. It really would be, if you just imagine fears, it could be a fear of not being worthy of this communication, fear that we're not doing it right, fear that it's somebody else is doing it better. See all of those things as walls that stand between us and those unseen helpers. We really want to ask for those walls to be healed and to come down so that we don't have that barrier. in that communication.
And if I were to frame this shamanically, it speaks of having to heal the aspects of yourself that stand between you and clear guidance. So it's the same difference there, isn't it?
Exactly. It's very much the same.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much power in knowing that we can bring ourselves to this relationship as equals. I think one of the big barriers that stands in the way for people is that feeling of how could I speak with high and exalted beings because here I am just kind of a lowly human being. It's that self-worth issue that we have. So when we ask for that to be healed, for that fear-based aspect of our own personality to be healed, then we can really enter into this relationship as equals. And that's where truly amazing things start to happen.
It is. And one of the things I say is, you are the spirit you serve. We're just divinations of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're
So,
all part of the same whole.
Did you find it difficult at first to trust the information you were getting from your guides, and how did you overcome that?
I did. I think it's very much a learning process, and like anything in life, the more we do it, the more confident we become. One of the measures that I saw in my own life is that many years ago, probably 20, 30 years ago, I started visiting clairvoyants, people who were psychics or channelers, looking for information, and it was very, very helpful. And then over time, I started just tuning in and turning inward, paying attention to my own guidance even more clearly. And as I did that, I found that every time I would go back to a psychic or a channeler, a clairvoyant, and get information, it became less of new information for me and more of an affirmation of what I already knew. So over time, I realized, oh, I don't have to go to other people to get this information. I have it within myself, and I can trust what I'm receiving. So I really encourage people to pay attention to that. At first, you may not trust it much, but take notes, write things down, become aware of the subtle, nuanced shifts in you and the changes in your life, and really acknowledge every time that you receive a piece of information where the evidence shows that it was correct, acknowledge that, celebrate it, thank your guides for it, and you will just really literally build that trusting relationship with them pretty quickly.
Boy, that gratitude piece is important, isn't it?
It's huge. It's so huge. Yeah, I tell a story in the book about one particular time when I was not grateful to my guides, when I actually blamed them for a situation in my life, and I got caught. I got busted by my guides. It was a huge learning lesson for me because, again, I had thought, well, our guides are beyond caring, what we think of them in a way, that they don't have all of the insecurities or the need for approval or gratitude that we do as human beings. And I found that that's not the case, that we need to treat them with the same dignity, respect, and gratitude that we do with anyone in our life, where we want to have a really solid, equal, respectful relationship.
Yeah, gratitude being, a very high frequency, just below love, actually, helps us stay at a place that we can commune with our helpers, don't you think?
I think that's really true, yes. And again, it goes back to asking for those fears, those lower energy vibrations to be healed in us so that we really can rise to the highest frequency. And at that place, then it is so much easier. It's as though that veil becomes thinner and we can just reach across, we can hear, we can understand the symbols as they come into our lives. We're just more attuned and more aware to all of the ways that they're communicating with us, so that we can literally receive that communication just in ways that we might not have ever thought possible before.
Can you communicate at will, or do you have to just wait for one to show up?
I can communicate at will. In fact, I really feel like I'm communicating with them constantly. This is one of the things I talk about in the book. I actually give a plan for many different ways that you can stop throughout your day and take maybe a minute, 5 minutes to sit and have a conversation, to ask a question, check in with your guides. And that, I think, is where we all can get to, and it's the place that's most beneficial for all of us. Because truly, they're right here with us, walking with us every single day. And it's only our immense amnesia about them that keeps us from checking in, keeps us from receiving all of that help that they can give us constantly. So I think for everyone, just as soon as we ask the question, if we're not receiving the communication, it's not because they're not ready, just that maybe we need to build that relationship and that opening a little bit more on our end.
Right. They're always there. It's just where are we is the question, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. We're going to have to take a quick break. Deborah and I will return to our discussion after this short break, and we'll talk about power animals in the flesh. You're listening to The Science of Magic on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Previous broadcasts of thought-provoking episodes can always be found on our website for free, www.thescienceofmagic.net. We will be back, so don't you go away. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, a place where magic and science come together to promote enlightenment. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Deb Engel, the author of Let Your Spirit Guide Speak, a simple guide for a life of purpose, abundance, and joy. Her web address is deborahengel.com and deborahengelspeaks.com. Deborah, I promised the listeners that we would talk a little bit about helping spirits and power animals in the feather and fur. Can you talk about how they might show up in ordinary reality in the animal form and how that relates back to spirit animals?
Absolutely. It's interesting because just last night at one of the Course in Miracles classes that I teach, one of the students related a story that had just happened earlier this week. It turned out that she had 3 different instances of an owl being very present in her life. One time it was just sitting in the tree and she heard the owl hooting. Another time she was walking with her husband. She was a little bit ahead of her husband and an owl swooped right over her, then landed in a tree and just sat and stared at her. And another time she again was walking and saw an owl just off to the side and heard it hooting. Now all of these happened within the space of about a day and a half or 2 days. And she realized after that third instance in particular, it was time to really pay attention. There was something here that was speaking to her. So she picked up one of her books on animal totems, looked up the meaning of owl, and saw that the meaning related directly to an issue that she's trying to sort out in her life right now, and gave her some excellent information. So I think that's a wonderful example of how this works, that our spirit animals can show up not just once, not just twice, but sometimes 3 times, or as many times as needed to get our attention until we finally say, oh, there's meaning here for us. So a lot of times with animals, that's how it works. It's just their presence will be a reminder to us to go and seek the information that can shed light on what's going on. Years ago, I helped facilitate a program that we created for women on spiritual and personal growth. And one of the activities that we did, because it included some shamanic kinds of work, was that we led the group in just a very simple exercise to tune in through a visualization and see who their spirit animal was. And it was remarkable, just time after time after time. Women who were fairly skeptical of this process would see an animal so clearly, and when they looked up the meaning behind that animal, invariably it just spoke to exactly who they were, what they needed to focus on in their life, where the growth opportunities were, a part of themselves that they needed to let go of so that they could grow. The meaning and the communication were always there.
What I find amazing is the synchronicity between the behavior of animals in the flesh or fur and those of our spirit animals. It seems like each animal tribe carries a particular frequency that follows through from physicality into spirit. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. And again, I think it's one of the main things about that is just to be aware of every single sighting and every instance that we have. Just like humans, we all have our own personality, our own frequency, our own gifts. And like you say, every animal tribe has that as well. So the great thing is that we don't have to have a library of knowledge in our heads about what each animal represents, because that information is freely available for us. The main thing is just to start to pay attention. And so much of it's intuitive, too. For instance, if you were to see a coyote in the wild, well, we have some preconceptions about coyotes, about their cunning, about their intelligence, about what they represent. We can really trust that. We also have the same about wolves or about deer. Back a few years ago, we live on an acreage in Madison County, Iowa. This is the Madison County that, if your listeners are familiar with the book, The Bridges of Madison County, it's that Madison County. This is where the book was written and the movie was filmed. Well, we live on an acreage, and I looked out into one of the fields behind our house, and our neighbor had brought a deer carcass into that field to feed eagles. So I just was stunned by what I was seeing, the power and the majesty of that combination of animals, deer and eagle together. One, just by itself, has so much meaning and symbolism for us. But then you put the two together, the unity of the eagles feeding on the deer, finding nourishment, and that whole circle of life. It didn't take a lot of interpretation to really see that there was a strong message there of integration of the whole. And that's where, when you take that information, you go inside, you internalize it, and you ask, what message does this have for me? You will come away with probably something enlightening that you just have never thought about before.
How can we tell if what our guides are telling us is literal or metaphorical? It seems like that's one of the biggest challenges.
Right. Well, again, I think as you develop that relationship, you will just come to know. There are times, for instance, when I'm talking with my guides, when they will tell me a story, much like the shamanic story that you shared. Sometimes they will share the meaning of that story. Sometimes they won't. They'll leave it open to my interpretation. But often I've found that if we are communicating with animal guides, often it will be more metaphorical. But if we are communicating with spirit entities like angels or light beings, entities that we might, for lack of a better description, consider almost human in form, then it is more of a conversation, and they can be pretty direct. There's an example from a young woman who picked up the book recently, read the book, and just sat down, started talking with her guides, and even though she had never done this before, 3 of them just came to her right away. Well, she was in a situation where she had competed in a fitness challenge over this past summer, had done very well, and in fact was one of 5 finalists to win a pretty great cash prize for this challenge. Well, it ended up, even though she really thought that she might win this and she had a good chance to, she didn't win. And when she found out that she had lost, she really plunged into a cycle of darkness and sadness about this, far beyond what she expected. Well, she decided that she would sit down and talk to her guides about this. And what she heard, actually she sat down and started typing, and she said she couldn't type fast enough because the words were coming through so clearly. And the message that she received was to really look at what she was able to do when she put her focus to something, to let go of the whole idea of winning or losing, because in this world of duality, we have it set up where if one person wins, then another person is miserable because they think they've lost. The guides were able to really put this in a new perspective, where she was able to see that she didn't lose at all. In fact, that pain of losing that she was experiencing was simply her perception, and her perception could change. It did change very quickly after this communication with the guides. I think it's an example of how clear and really straightforward they often are, and how much also they very gently turn our perceptions and our perspectives of this world into something much, much greater that literally does raise our vibration even as we're speaking with them.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? One thing that I've noticed is that, and I think it's a pitfall that we have, and yet, so people aren't used to decoding what the metaphor of a spirit guide may be. Okay, so like your power animals. So we turn to books where people have studied the animals and relate the traits of the animals back to what it might mean for us. And I find that bridge very, very useful for a lot of my students. However, how important do you think it is to make sure you understand that the message is for you and you can look at what it might possibly mean, but ultimately, don't you kind of need to drop into your own relationship to know what it really means for you?
Absolutely. I think that's so important. It would be as though you were listening to someone else's advice for your life. Maybe you're sitting with a high school guidance counselor who's saying, here's the information that I have for you based on this test or this knowledge base. This is the direction that you should go in life. Well, that may be helpful, but exactly as you said, we need to really check in with ourselves and with our guidance and say, is that the best thing for me? That information is based on the average or the norm across the board, but each of us is unique, and we need to take that body of information and then take it to a much more personal and individual level, because each of us has our own personal path. That's, I think, the most important and most valuable part of all of this in communicating with our spirit guides. We have been, I think, programmed over millennia to think that we have to go through someone else in order to have a connection to God. It might be a minister or a priest or even a government leader, a king. There have been many variations of this through history. And we're now at a time where we're really realizing we don't have to go through anyone else. We don't have to have permission or a roadmap from someone else for how to do this. We get to just check in for ourselves and trust that path and that door is open for us exactly as we are.
Boy, that's about to throw a wrench in the systems that be, isn't it? If we have actually.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing. I've worked with so many people over the years who have really been stymied by those teachings that we're not enough, that we really don't deserve the grace of God, or that we have to prove ourselves and work our whole lives to try to earn our way into heaven. We know, I think, so much of the spiritual evolution that we're experiencing is to help us awaken to the fact that we are all divine. We are all children of God, and there's nothing that we have to do or prove to establish our worth. Our worth is there. It's our birthright from the very beginning.
Yeah, it's amazing because it's like all of the scriptures, whether it's the Christian or otherwise, speak of us being children of God or us being part of the divine, and yet the systems try to teach us that we're not in order to control us, don't you think?
I think that's true. I think, too, so often people enter into this kind of relationship with God or with spirit guides almost as though they're children speaking to a parent. And I think what we want to do is change that relationship, change the way we look at ourselves so that we are friend to friend. We are co-creator to co-creator. We are elevated in this relationship.
Yeah, co-creator to co-creator, a beautiful way of putting it. And, recognizing that can also make us feel a little lonely in a way because we look for comfort outside of ourselves. And if we look at it as unity, all of a sudden it's all within us, isn't it?
It is. And And I think that does take some getting used to for people because we are so used to turning to friends and family members or to others for that comfort and that guidance. Of course, that's wonderful. We need friends and we need family. But we also need
Yes.
to recognize that every single one of us is operating from our own framework, our own perspective.
Absolutely. And I'm going to have to take another break, Deborah.
Sure.
We'll be back on the other side of this. Deborah and I will be back on the flip side of this commercial. You're listening to The Science of Magic on the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net, the place where altruistic professionals of science and the esoteric create common ground for the betterment of our world. You can always listen to previous transformative broadcasts on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is the Science of Magic, bringing together gifted people of service to the world. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour, Deborah Engel, is the author of Let Your Spirit Guide Speak, a simple guide for a life of purpose, abundance, and joy. Deb, we were having fun talking about power animals and helping spirits and what's literal and what's metaphorical. Now, I bet people are kind of wondering, how many guides does each person get?
I think that number can vary, and it can certainly change throughout your lifetime, too. The first real direct experience that I had with my guides was probably 20 or 25 years ago when, and I describe this in the book, I went for an appointment with a woman who was a therapist and a person who did past life regressions through hypnotherapy. And she took me through hypnosis back into the time before I came into this body for this lifetime. And in that hypnosis, I was able to see a whole team of guides, probably 6 or 7 guides, who were all there cheering me on and showing me and telling me what I came into this life to do. Now, I know that some of those guides are still with me. They've been with me off and on. But I know that there has also been a shift in my guides from time to time. At one point, I needed a set of guides who would really help me get over the crest of a mountain, just a big challenge and accomplishment that I had going on in my life. And so my team of guides changed temporarily, much like the changing of the guard at Buckingham Palace. So I've heard of people, sometimes people have one primary guide, sometimes they'll have several. We just know that very much like as we go through our lives, our friends will shift and the support team around us will shift. That's true with our guides as well.
Absolutely. And I've also found when I'm working with healing with people that there's you can use a spirit guide. A new spirit guide might come in to help you integrate the healing that you're going through at the time. Have you seen that?
I have, yes, very much so. And again, I think it speaks to the vibration, that guides are at different vibrations just as humans are. And sometimes as our vibrations change, then we need a guide of a different vibration to help us either temporarily or they might become one of our permanent guides from that point on.
And so by aligning with the guide, by calling them in, we're actually being given a frequency we may have disconnected from so that we can learn to reconnect. Is that how you're seeing it?
Exactly, right. And I think we really just continue to raise that vibration more and more and more. Again, it's one of those subtle shifts, energetic shifts that some people may be very aware of. Some people may not feel really at all. But if you just keep track of how things are changing within you, even if it's over a period of weeks or months or years, you'll realize, oh, I'm handling situations in my life so differently than I used to. Again, there's a woman in one of the Course in Miracles classes that I teach. We were talking about this last night, that she's been working with her spirit guides and doing other spiritual study as well, and even her physical appearance has changed just in the past couple of months. It's as though some layers of fear have been healed and have dropped away. She just has a much softer and gentler kind of countenance to her. And one of the fringe benefits for her, she's single, and she's finding that men are approaching her. We joked about the fact that she let go of her man repellent through this change in vibration. So it is an ever increasing and ever rising vibration that, if we, again, just pay attention, we can see the clues that things are changing.
I've seen that as well, how the way we physically look is totally affected by the frequencies that we're carrying or not carrying at any given time. And so by aligning with our guides and power animals and helping spirits, we can actually take on frequencies that we've been missing and become more fleshed out and whole. And it actually makes you look younger, doesn't it?
It really does. I've seen this over and over again, and it does create a different vibration of attractiveness to other people, whether it's coworkers, family, friends, just the way that we're out there in the world. It's, again, that frequency that takes us to a higher place allows us to be more crystalline and clear so that when we walk into a room, people are attracted to us. I talk in the book about my own story of meeting my husband and how that worked with him, and I know so clearly that the fact that I met my husband the way and when I did was directly related to a conversation I had with the guides where I finally relinquished all of the fears I had about finding the right person and just detached, handed it over to them and said, I know you know who I need and where to find him and how to bring us together. And even with that, I think my vibration raised so that we could find each other.
Exactly. And I think that this plays out in these times, finding our soul team. The more we are true to our expression, the more we attract the ones that are on the same path. Do you see that?
Absolutely. And I think, in fact, I talk with people about this. Often I'll have a session with a woman at any age, really, who is hoping for a relationship, a life partner. And we talk about the fact that it's so important to first have those fears healed, to rise to a higher vibration. Because if they go looking for a spiritual partner at that stage, when their vibration is lower, they're going to attract someone at a lower vibration. And that's really not what they want. We want to be at the highest vibration possible when we meet that person, so that then we'll know the person we're meeting is at that high vibration too. It's one of the laws of energy that we can't really coexist in the same space for very long with someone who is at a very different vibration than we are. So it's so worth it to do the inner spiritual work with your guides to get to the highest place that you can, and then ask them to take care of that meeting to take place.
I love it. Why do you think it's increasingly important for all of us to work with our spirit guides at this particular time?
Well, I think if we turn on the news, we'll have a quick lesson in why it is so important. We are bombarded, oh my gosh, especially right now, with so many negative messages through the campaign season, through terrorism, through all of the events going on in the world. It's so overwhelming. It can be. And that's why I think many people are just turning that off, wisely turning it off, because, boy, nothing can bring down our vibration more quickly than sitting and listening to a half hour of news and all of doom and gloom that comes with it. So I think the thing about it is that it can overwhelm us. It can make us feel as though we're hopeless, that this world is headed in a terrible direction. What could possibly fix it? What could make it better? Well, if we look at historically, the truth is that we operate from a great collective fear, and that fear is not going to make things better. But if we ask for that fear to be healed, and we call on the vast resource of spiritual energy and help that's available to us, that's where real change can happen, because that's always coming from love rather than fear. So I think it's partly just for our own personal well-being and peace of mind. Every time we connect with our guides, we know that goodness exists and hope is possible and things are all is well and always will be. But also for a collective unconscious standpoint, from a global standpoint, it's so important because that's how we'll continue to expand and extend love into this world, and that's clearly what we need.
Absolutely, it is. Before we totally run out of time, Deb, would you mind telling people where they can find your books and your classes?
Absolutely. The books are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, through your favorite independent bookstore. They're out there everywhere. And you can find a list of upcoming events, including classes, workshops, and presentations that I'll be doing in different parts of the country at my website, DeborahEngle.com, and that's DebraEngle.com.
Thank you so much for that. So, this is a time in our history, I think, where, like you were saying, being mindful to spend more time with uplifting, frequency-raising things like our spirit guides and less time with the hype and hysteria is so important. Do you have anything more to say about that?
Well, I think it's just a matter of intention. Like everything, we have a choice in life. We can choose to spend our time and our energy and our focus on things that drag us down or that don't support us. Or we can just choose a different thought and see, I could use that same amount of time sitting and listening and talking with my guides. Which one would serve me more? If we look at it that way, it's really a very, very simple choice. Know that your ego fear will try to drag you to that direction of more fear, more worry and anxiety. And when you do, just ask for that to be healed. Ask for your spirit guides to support you in healing that fear so that you can make the choice for love instead.
Making a choice for love is so important, isn't it? Because again, we're looking at that frequency thing. What do we want to manifest? We're going to manifest something differently from fear than we do from love. Is that what you're looking at there?
Absolutely. Yep. And that's why we can just look around in our lives, look at our relationships, look at our homes, our work, how the flow of our life goes, and we can tell what sort of frequency we're in. If it's not working very well, it's a good time to start talking to the guides.
Good time to reevaluate with a little bit of guidance. Exactly. Deborah, this has been so wonderful. I can't thank you enough for being on the Science of Magic with us. I hope we get to do it again sometime.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a real pleasure. Our guest this hour has been Deborah Engle, author of Let Your Spirit Guide Speak, a simple guide for a life of purpose, abundance, and joy. And the only little prayer you need, her website is www.DeborahEngle.com. This has been The Science of Magic. Remember, you can always listen to past thought-provoking episodes on our website without having to pay for it, www.thescienceofmagic.net. Until next time, dear ones, may you be blessed with knowledge and comforted with love as you follow your own divine guidance.